Hi, welcome everybody. We're in ChicagoLionsProRadio.com. My name is Hernan Espinoza, La Fiera Deportiva, together with Dan Kelly, Channel 50 broadcaster, play-by-play, Big Ten Network. It's a pleasure to have you here in the studios, Dan.
Hernan, good to see a familiar face and also a big fan of the beautiful game like myself.
Thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you in the Illinois Center for Broadcasting, and of course here in the studio, ChicagoLionsProRadio.com. Welcome. One more thing, this is my home radio station. I will say that. I remember broadcasting for the Chicago Fire. The first time I went to do an interview with the team, I have the badge for ChicagoLionsProRadio.com. So just as you know, this is when I started right here in ChicagoLionsProRadio.com. How are you, Dan?
I'm great. It's like you guys got a great setup. I mean, what a view. I mean, and I'm pretty impressed with the Chicago Fire paraphernalia. I see Jim Curtin. I see Magic Mike McGee. I see the great badge. This place has got some character. It's nice.
yes. You're missing a few things that they're not here, but also Cubs fun, as you can see. We love baseball too.
Just a little bit. I guess that's a rather important sport in this market too.
We were joking the other day. We have like 12 players of the Cubs and only 3 for the White Sox. So you'll see what it's going to, right?
Well, it kind of reflects the attendance too, doesn't it?
Well, Dan, thank you for coming here. We're trying to talk about you first of all. You do Chicago Fire play-by-play, but you started with hockey. What you talking about a little bit?
Yeah, well, I guess I come from a hockey family in St. Louis, and I did a lot of hockey in my first 10 years of my career, coming primarily from the National Hockey League. So still, it's nice to now do like 4 or 5 different sports, but I still, thanks to the Big Ten Network and now the Big Ten Hockey Conference, and it's just beginning its second season, still able to keep your toes on the ice, so to speak, and still do some hockey, because it's fun, because all these different sports they share a lot of different similar similarities and tendencies and things you look for.
The passion and the growing crowd that go to every single game, either hockey or soccer, must be big for you.
Yeah, well, it's 2 things that are growing. College hockey is growing, and you see that especially reflected now in television coverage, and we know how far soccer has grown. I mean, I've been now in Major League Soccer for 5 years, and it's grown exponentially. And you can see how the numbers, whether it be television or attendance, it's reflected, and you get some of those numbers and that momentum building from World Cups, and that's what's so cool to see the direction in this country. Soccer's not going away. It's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and I think for fans of the beautiful game, that's good news.
I have a question that somebody asked me in an interview. Would you rather, as a sport broadcaster, would be your dream to broadcast a hockey final or a soccer final, a MLS final? What would be your dream come true?
That's a good question. I'd have to say now a soccer final.
Soccer final.
It's definitely, and especially my first glimpse of because oftentimes, as you know, we're kind of detached. We're in the press box, we're far away. But my first time on the field during a live game was in 2009 MLS Cup playoffs. The Chicago Fire against the New England Revolution. The great Blanco was gallivanting around the field. There's 22,000 people at Toyota Park, and that place was electric. Just to soak up some of that, it would be pretty cool to call a match with that atmosphere again.
Exactly. Talking about the Chicago Fire, a lot of news for the Chicago Fire. Recently, we have also the call for Sam Johnson going to the national team to play against Ireland and against Colombia. What do you think about that?
That's great. Because especially as you know, Arnon, it wasn't always the brightest season for the Chicago Fire. They went through some adversity. Sean's numbers were not great, but Sean, as we saw, he was not the problem. He was still the consistent keeper he's been, and to see him grow the last 5 years, because he was just that little baby-faced kid when he was 20 years old. He was supposed to be the third keeper behind Dykstra and John Bush, and he was thrust into that position. It's also pretty neat to see Sean as he's gotten bigger accolades and gone to the bigger stages. He's still a good kid. He's a young man now, but he's the type of kid that's going to keep soaking up knowledge and listening to. He's not going to get too big a head on his shoulders.
Also named MVP for the Chicago Fire 2014.
Can't forget about that. He was back there, and at times that back four in front of him was, they struggled at times, and there was some inconsistency. The one consistent thing though was his presence, and that was a good thing.
Talking about the Chicago Fire, season 2014 with Dan Kelly and Kevin Egan on Channel 50. You started 4 years ago with the broadcast. How does it feel? What's the changes in winning that you started to not right now?
You know, it's. I've been fortunate. I've worked with good people: Chris Doran, Evan Whitfield, and now Kevin Egan. Kevin's one of my favorite partners in any sport I've worked with because it's you know we go. It's a long night in terms of having to do a pregame show. So before we do the pregame show, and if we're laughing like 5-year-olds, and that's a good thing. It allows you to relax and it's just it makes going to work that much more fun, knowing that you're going to laugh, but knowing that you're going to sit there passionately talk about soccer and try to treat this like the big thing that we treat it is covering a match. So that's been the fun part, and also having a pregame show. I guess just looking forward to more positive days, though, and more MLS Cup playoffs in the future for the Chicago Fire.
There's two words that probably describe you as the best commentator on TV when they score a goal. First of all, when you say Quincy Amarikwa scored, you say "Welcome to Amarikwa," and the second one is when Harry Sheep scores, you go "Holy Sheep, Harry Sheep." You know, those two things memorable. Probably this first year that you mentioned it or you called it like that in the first calls of them.
Yeah, it's as you know, it's.
Did that come to your idea right away, or did you have it prepared for that?
It kind of both. It's funny, like we had a production meeting that morning in New York, and you're talking about when Harry Shipp had a hat trick in mid-May, and I, for once I got it right. I was like to Kevin and Keener, our producer Dan Keener, I was like, Shipp's going to score his first goal tonight in Major League Soccer. I didn't know he was going to score a hat trick, so I asked Dan, because he's a great producer and he's a great barometer, I was like, can I say "Holy Ship" on the air, or is that a little dicey? He's like, no, I think it's just an inference. You can. So, and I didn't say it the first two goals he scored. Then when he got the third, I was like, well, it might be time to say it. So you kind of have it in your back of your head, and then it comes out.
One of the best players for the Chicago Fire, the rookie player for the Chicago Fire, Harry Sheep. I think he's going to be doing great for the Chicago Fire. He's staying in the Chicago Fire, right?
Yeah, he's another kid that's going to, he's going to be a good listener. I think Frank Yallop is a good manager for him. The exciting thing about Harry, too, is I covered him in college when he played for Notre Dame. Of course, won a national championship, beating Maryland last year. And talking to, actually, Todd Yeagley, the Indiana head coach down in Bloomington, who faced Harry a lot. He said Harry got better every year. And, Harry wasn't even a starter at times for Notre Dame. So it's been a big jump. But to see that he's going to continue to grow, and I think that path is going to continue to get better. Because, Harry, he's not the fastest guy out there, but he's kind of got some of those Mike McGee qualities. He's not fast, but he's more technical, I think, than a lot of young American players we see coming out of college soccer.
And also, he's very true when he answers the questions. He knows exactly what to say, and he knows the whole phrase when you answer. I mean, you interview him a lot of times. He talks a lot, and he talks, clearly exactly what he wants to say. There's not Harry like when you interview Mike McGee, you see the difference between Harry and Mike McGee, right? But tell us about broadcast soccer. I mean, I know you started with college, that you jumped to the MLS. What kind of advice you can give to the new generation of broadcasters in soccer on TV or radio?
I think the first thing is I can remember calling my first soccer game. It was back in 2006. I think it was so long ago. It was at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. I didn't know the league, didn't know the sport that well, was a hockey guy. But on the road, who's the first person I run into at 5 a.m. because I'm so nervous? It's game day and it's my first soccer game. There's Bob Bradley, So I think the biggest thing is just to throw yourself into it and start to, that's all especially when I started to do Major League Soccer, I didn't have time to watch the Premier League because you're trying to learn a new league too. So to just immerse yourself and watch as much as you can and study it. And that's the good thing about being a freelancer or just being a play-by-play broadcaster is, from May to August, I'm just calling pro soccer. There's no college sports really. So you have the time to sit there. And with modern technology, you can just go to the MLS app or you can watch soccer anytime you want. And especially now I'll start to try to watch more international soccer too, because you hear people and you can borrow stuff the way they call games around the world and bring it back to the United States and maybe even use it in other sports. That's the advantage.
Talking about World Cup, when they asked me the same question I asked you, they say, what would be your dream? To see Bolivia win the championship for the World Cup? I say, no, it would be to broadcast a World Cup game, Even in any country, even, in Spanish or English, doesn't matter. But that would be one of my dreams, to broadcast the final of national champions or World Cup. But anyway, jumping in another subject really quick, Dan. The finals, the semifinals for the MLS is going to be to the end. 4 teams left. What's your favorite?
Well, I don't, and back to your thing about the dream game. Hey, I mean, I'd be happy with the group stage game. Come on, he doesn't have to be the final, right, Hernan? But I don't know if I think it's going to be really difficult for anyone to stop the Los Angeles Galaxy. They're deep. They can hit you from every position. And this is a team that has been so good over the years, but now they also have that. Okay, let's go out well for Landon too. So there's so many storylines that are pointing to the LA Galaxy's direction, I think.
The next question will be Los Angeles Football Club, the new team that just opened. Next year they're coming for New York Football Club and Orlando City. So MLS is growing so fast. They have 3 different teams. The draft is coming. Now the other draft is coming when they're gonna practically give away all the players from the Chivas USA. So what do you thought about next year for the MLS? How do you see it for next year?
I would love to see Torres in a Chicago Fire shirt. That would be first and foremost. But I think a lot of people, and I saw this in the NHL too, and there might be more validity to it in soccer, but a lot of people will say that Major League Soccer is maybe starting to expand too quick, because where are we going to get these players from? But to me, and I saw this in hockey, well, for years it was just North Americans playing in the NHL. Well, all of a sudden you're tapping talent throughout the world. So that's how the NHL all of a sudden was able to expand. When people say that NHL rosters are not as talented as they used to be, I think that's false, because you used to not be a global game. And the same thing with soccer. I think also now we can support it here in the United States, because the numbers of amateur soccer are going to continue to swell and continue to increase, and you're going to see American players get better, especially with the game being on television. I mean, when I grew up, you couldn't watch, with the exception of Missile, Major Indoor Soccer League, you couldn't watch soccer. Maybe you'd have a taped game on a Sunday, but now these kids, you talk to a kid that's 20 years old, they might not necessarily know the starting pitcher for their Major League Baseball team, but they'll know about the Premier League. It's amazing to see how the game has grown, and I think that's going to help produce talent for the leagues to come.
Especially when you put the channels Univision and Telemundo, and you have Saturday and Sunday soccer. Now there's a few networks that, like NBC broadcasting the English Premier League on a Sunday morning, and other networks that are doing the same,
Look at Harry Shipp, because, okay, if you're just exposed to American soccer, Harry used to listen to the Spanish broadcast of the Mexican leagues as a kid, as a 3-4-year-old, and try to imitate them. Now you have that access to that. So these kids growing up can watch these great leagues all over the world and get a different flavor of the game, because as we know, there's more than one way to play it, and the Americans don't always play it the best way.
Well, I have a couple of questions more for you, Dan. First of all, favorite team of hockey, favorite team of soccer. I know you have one, and favorite national team of soccer. You can say USA too, but give me another one too.
That's gonna be. I'll say the USA. I'll say the Chicago Fire.
Chicago.
I mean, I'm a North American. I like watching a team like the Los Angeles Galaxy. I'll keep it in the U.S. Especially, we got. I mean, in a second, the Seattle Sounders. Get my guy Marco Papa. But I like to see that talent. You see some of the former guys for the Fire. Favorite hockey team? I can't really pick one, because I've worked for some teams. I'm a fan of the Blackhawks. My brother works for the St. Louis Blues still, so I keep my eye on them. I'll say I'll give the easy one. I'll say the Minnesota Golden Gophers, because I cover them in college hockey.
All right. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it for coming here to ChicagoLandSportRadio.com. I hope it's not the last one. Thank you for talking about something about soccer. This a few times. Thank you for coming to ICB also to talk to the students. I hope it's not the first or the last time. We can have you here one of these days that you have off until March, right? When you start again with Channel 50 with the Big Ten Network and the Chicago Fire. I hope Chicago Fire have a good season next year. And thank you one more time for being here at ChicagoLandSportRadio.com. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Hernan, you're a class man. It's always good seeing you and the staff here. Thanks for having me, and hopefully it's a big off season for our Chicago Fire.
I hope so. Thank you very much.